It would be in the high millions, I would guess.
What's high millions?
Well, over 50.
No, I don't think so. No. No, I think it's millions of dollars. I think it's several $1 million.
Okay. Well, I would think that it would be reasonable to think that for several $1 million, we would be able to have an accurate assessment of what the impacts, the negative impacts of hydraulic fracturing would be on our tourism industry.
Yeah.
Do you believe that we have that information?
The SGIS did look at impacts on tourism, mostly from anecdotal evidence in Pennsylvania and other places.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Pennsylvania has a very different tourism industry than New York does. I mean, as you know, it's one of our biggest industries.
Right.
I would expect for the amount of money we've spent so far, it would be realistic to think that I could go back to my constituents and my tourism organizations and say, this is what the cost of hydrofracking will be on your industry. Do we have that type of information?
It's hard in a generic environmental impact statement.
No, it's not.
That level of specificity, because we don't know exactly where the activity is going to be undertaken, where the wells will actually be located, or how many wells will actually come into New York.
Well, tourism is just one example. What about for our police and fire departments? Do I have information within this study that allows me to go back to my police and fire departments and educate them on what the cost will be to their budgets, the negative impacts of hydraulic fracturing?
Again, it's mostly anecdotal because the activity hasn't happened in this state. So we do know what's happened in other states, and it's not, again, it's not perfectly analogous because we have a very different, proposed a very different set of regulations than happened in other states.
Excuse me, with all due respect, I'm confused. I would think that the purpose of the report would be to try to estimate what the impacts of the costs in our economy would be. Otherwise, I'm not sure what exactly we're studying in these reports.
It does, in a general way.
Yeah.
Well, I've read the reports, and it just seems that it glosses over a lot of these issues that I'm asking about. I am trying to find also, just in regards to the negative impact on our roads and highways, by reading these reports, there doesn't seem to be a way to calculate what the impact would be on the state's budget for repairing the highways and roads. Do you think that that information is important? Do you think that it might be forthcoming?
Of course it's important. And
So where is it?
if we had more specific information about the number of wells and where they were going to be actually located, then we could generate specific information.
Well, I would think within the report, you could maybe do some estimates saying if there were 10 wells in this part of the country, it might cost us this much to repair those roads. It seems like there would be reasonable ways to provide a variety of scenarios, but I just don't see those when I read the report. It seems to be glaringly missing.
It is a generic environmental impact statement. It is not intended to generate specific activity because, once again, we don't know the specifics about how it will, or if it will develop in New York.
But there is a 251-page economic assessment report as a part of that, and only 7 pages of that really address any of the issues that I'm talking about right now. I appreciate your patience answering some questions. I just have one more question. Are we clear on exactly what chemicals are in fracking water?
There is a list, an exhaustive list in the SGIS of the potential chemicals that can be used. I think we list up to 350 chemicals, very specifically. Since we haven't fracked a high volume well in New York, we don't know what they would use specifically in New York, but we require them to give us that both before and after a frack job.
So if we don't know exactly what chemicals will be used to frack a well in New York, do the scientists that are doing the current health study know what the chemicals are that will be used to frack wells?
Okay, we're going to take a recess very shortly and come back in about 5 hours if you want to do it that way. We're trying to get this done in a productive way. He's answering the questions. If you don't like the answers, you certainly don't have to like them. But at least give him the respect of answering them and the questioner the respect of having the questions asked. I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
The health experts had the SGIS in front of them, which listed all of the potential chemicals that we think could be used in New York State.
Well, I guess my point is I'm trying to determine that in spending the amount of money that we're spending in doing these reports, if if we don't know exactly what type of chemicals are going to be used, and if the scientists don't know exactly what type of chemicals are going to be used, then why are we spending millions of dollars to do a report, and how can it be effective if neither the scientists nor your department know exactly what type of chemicals would be used?
We know all the potential chemicals that would be used, and we've listed all of those, and we've enumerated the type of health impacts that are associated with those chemicals. So I'm not sure, again, absent actually having the experience in New York of having a high-volume well frac, how we could possibly know that. What we do know is in other states what chemicals they use. They would use some subset of the chemicals that are listed in the SDIS. We're talking about an activity that hasn't happened here. So we can only use the information we have from other states. So I'm not sure what you're trying to get at.
I'm just trying to get at how to justify spending this amount of money on a report that isn't actually delivering the results that we need. And
don't agree with that.
But you've already said you don't know exactly what chemicals will be used.
Excuse me a minute. I think he said quite clearly that he won't know what chemicals a developer might use until an application is presented, and the list that is on the report is an exhaustive list of chemicals that were used in other states. Now, I think he's being very consistent, and I don't think it's correct to try to mischaracterize what he's saying.
Well, with all due respect, Mr. Chairman, I'm not trying to mischaracterize it. I'm just trying to get a clear answer. It seems like everything is based on a hypothetical situation. What
Because
happens in other states?
we haven't allowed the activity in New York State. That's why it's hypothetical. The activity has happened in a dozen other states, and we use information from those states to anticipate what might happen or be used in New York State. That's about as good as we can do in New York.
Thank you for being here today, and thanks for being patient answering my questions.